And so this is a little story called "The Most Fucked Up Thing I've Ever Seen," but it actually isn't really true. But it comes close. So in the fantastically noir bankruptcy that was the crumbling CBGBs-era Lower East Side Manhattan, daytime was a cacophony of Orchard Street and restaurant supply gridlock, and the occasional blinking junkies nodding out in Ukrainian delis. But nighttime was a barren playground of damp and empty streets where vagrant youth escaped from many a suburban rec room came out to play. We were those vagrants. And when I lived with my boyfriend Bradley Field, the drummer from Teenage Jesus and the Jerks, he was called Drummer since he only had a single snare, at our loft on 240 Grand Street over the Hang Seng grocery store and across the street from the grandiose robber baron era Bowery Bank, where the apple doll-faced homeless lady on the steps would cry all day long, "Fuck me up the butt for money." That's true. To a random, unfazed passersby, those night streets were a beckoning siren of unpredictable adventure. Usually we would wait until the Ravillos had come to pick up their equipment, or we'd locked Sonic Youth out of our 8-foot square, sweating cinder block basement rehearsal space and just walk up to CBGB's to see what trouble we could get into. The admission and the drinks were always free, and afterwards we would stumble out to close the Nightbirds, or our 14-year-old Marymount Catholic school girlfriends would take us to Harlem to hang out on a filthy mattress at a bar called the Pink Hearse. That's all true. But for a few days, the Dickies had left their decrepit, rusting, seatless, once-white Chevy tour van outside our house with the modest request that we please move it to safe parking spaces to prevent it from being towed. Of course, unbeknownst to the trusting Dickies, that meant free rides for everyone. Freed by the magic of those bald tires from our ghettoized existence in a quarter-mile square of the Bowery, we'd take a sort of Coney Island approach to careening around the vacant nighttime adventures of Manhattan, cajoling random pedestrians. "Hey, whore, how much?" The barely pubescent squeal of one of the Vodka Sisters would startle many an elderly Lexington Avenue matron or Christopher Street clone. I had met the teenage Vodka Sisters when they were using Bradley as a couch, since he happened to be conveniently passed out in the gutter in front of CBGB's. It was better to stay away from the walls near the awning in those early years, because the bums who inhabited the flophouse on the floor above CBGB's would respond to the incessant punk racket by occasionally throwing burning mattresses out of the windows onto the crowd lingering just outside the front door. This particular evening, I pulled the creaking van up to the curb in front of CB's at 11:30 with Bradley in the death seat. We just opened the door and asked, who wants to go make fun of the idiots waiting in line at Studio 54? The Vodka Sisters, Howie Pyro of the Besed, Jim Sclavunos, who would later grace Teenage Jesus, Eight-Eyed Spy, and the Cramps in the bad seats with his drumming, and maybe one other person gamely got in. A joyride around Manhattan for citizens usually condemned to the vagaries of public transport was still exotic enough that you didn't have to ask twice. Off we went. As the van slalomed uncertainly through the potholed streets, the usual brown-bagged beers were hoisted in convivial jollity, although Bradley insisted on room temperature Clan McGregor because that's what Lou Reed drinks. Soon enough, we arrived near the velvet ropes of the dreaded disco with the crush of lycra-clad hopefuls looking like a bunch of wrinkled Nagel prints clamoring for the notice of the stone-faced doorman. We drove by, but the curb was too crowded with cabs and limos for an effective verbal punky assault. Since we happened to find a parking spot nearby, we decided to get out of the van and stroll over to gawk at the breed who seemed culturally a stranger species to us than any nudibranch at the local aquarium. But it was boring. Upon closer inspection, they seemed just about as interesting as any bridge and tunnel invaders looking for a place to bump the night away. So dejected by our punkus interruptus, we ambled back to the van, wondering, should we look and see if the student teachers are at the Marlin? One of the Vodka Sisters saw a Coke can left on the sidewalk and gave it a little frustrated kick with her worn Converse. Surprisingly, the can headed upward a couple of feet in a smooth arc and happened to hit the ankle of some dark-haired woman walking slightly ahead of us, whom we subsequently recognized by her white disco outfit as one of the wannabes who had been turned away by the Studio 54 security. The Coke can turned out to be not quite empty, and maybe an ounce of Coke trickled out onto the drape of her modestly flared slacks. She instantly wheeled around, livid with rage. "Who do you think you are? What was that?" Ms. Vodka said timidly, "I'm sorry, I didn't know there was anything in it, and I didn't mean to hit you." "Oh, sure," growled the lady. "Like I'm supposed to believe that." Almost as a body, we all kind of murmured listlessly, "Oh, fuck you. It just didn't seem like that big a deal," and we'd already apologized. By that point, the woman's stockily muscular date in the brown bomber jacket was glaring at us with murderous intensity, the veins bulging on his Italian neck, as he thundered in Jersey patois, "Fuck her! Fuck my lady! I'll show you who's fucked around here!" waving his fists at us threateningly. We may have had the numbers advantage, but this seemed like more trouble than it was worth. So we just said, "Oh, calm the fuck down, asshole. We're leaving, okay?" And we walked quickly to the van, which we had neared by now. "This isn't over," growled the thug. But I thought, we're already in the car and driving off. What can he do? It was unpleasant and certainly made the skin bristle with a slight tingle of fear. That could easily have ended up with someone getting hit. But as I tried to wriggle the van out of one of those bumper-to-bumper NYC parking jobs, it seemed like it was just one more minor contretemps on the way to our next destination. Howie, who was looking out the back window of the van, said, "They've got a car. It looks like they're pulling up alongside us." I looked at my mirror, and sure enough, the sporty little convertible was pulling up next to us, and I could clearly see the guy's seething pit bull glower and the Jersey plates. Eek! I quickly swung the van out into traffic and proceeded to head up 8th Avenue at as a rapid clip as the wheezing engine would allow. I was still thinking, this is ridiculous. What can they possibly do against 6 people in a van? Howie squealed, "He's right behind us." And indeed, he was tailgating us so close that if I had braked fast enough, he and his girlfriend would both have been in the van with us. The light turned red, and I stopped. This is where it's got to end. He's had his fun, and now we'll just both go on. But suddenly Howie was screaming, "He's got a gun!" "That's not funny, Howie," I blurted, while everyone else was suddenly wailing, "But he does! He does!" I turned around and saw him pointing his sawed-off shotgun directly at the back of the van through his windshield. Meanwhile, his girlfriend, with amazing alacrity and gymnastic aplomb, was somehow already at Bradley's door on the passenger side, and she was whipping the van with chains she had acquired as if from nowhere. "Eat shit and die, bitch," Bradley slurred at her helpfully through his open window, apparently given quite a bit of misdirected courage by Lou Reed's favorite quaff. As the girl tried to knock Bradley's mirror off with the chains and was coming perilously close to Bradley's face, everyone in the back was screaming, "Shut up, Bradley, shut up," while Bradley just continued to cackle maniacally, stick out his tongue, and call the girl "fucking whore." Her face grew ever more contorted as she swung the chains wildly, and the light seemed like it was never going to change. I think someone in the back had already begun to cry, but Jim Sklvunos could be heard laughing uncomfortably. In the endless seconds waiting for the light to change, I just thought, this can't go on, and I gunned the van right through the light. They can't want to risk following us and get a ticket, I ruminated uncertainly while speeding up the avenue around maddeningly slow traffic, but the girl had let back into the convertible and they had skidded through the red light right on our tail. I thought, here's something they won't do, and I slammed the steering wheel to the right, forcing the teetering van down a narrow one-way street the wrong way. How badly can they want that comeuppance? They can't be as crazy as me, but they were upon us, and the girl had hefted her torso halfway out of her passenger side window, swinging the chains like Wonder Woman's lariat and screaming indecipherable obscenities at us, while the guy glowered over the steering wheel, the muzzle of the shotgun poised between his clenched fists. By this time, Howie had started openly weeping. "We're all gonna die, we're all gonna die," as involuntary murmurs and wails were coming out of the rest of the passengers, who were being thrust from side to side across the corrugation of the bare metal floor of the van with every sudden turn I tried to make. Only Bradley continued laughing, leaning out of the window and giving our assailants the finger and screeching at them in a cheery fashion. "Oh, shut up, Howie," I said. "That's not really helping me think." To his piercing bawling with a somewhat calm stentorian assertiveness, the source of which I still can't fathom. In the odd perceptual slowness of time that occurs in the midst of many adrenaline catastrophes, I somehow had time to consider, well, let's see. I have no driver's license. And even if I did, it says it's illegal for me to drive without glasses, and I don't have my glasses, which means I'm actually not able to see clearly enough to drive. This van has no registration, and it has no license plates. That's not so good. But I had formulated a plan in my mind. I would drive so insanely that a policeman would have to stop us, or the Jersey fiends would give up the chase, or both. I thought going to jail for a couple of weeks was likely a better choice than having one of us get shot or mauled by chains. So with newfound determination, I proceeded to drive deliberately only against traffic down one-way streets and through every red traffic light signal, assuming there had to be one of Manhattan's finest somewhere along those streets who would take due notice. All I can say is from 58th Street and 8th Avenue all the way to 2nd Avenue and 10th Street, driving down one-way streets the wrong way and going through every single red light, I heard a lot of horns honking, but we didn't see a single police car or beat cop anywhere. Not one police car. And the Jersey couple had kept hot on our heels the entire way, waving the shotgun, cursing us in various strange languages. A babble of groans and whimpers from my passengers kept my ears abuzz. Finally, I spotted the police cruiser parked outside of that corner deli across the street from St. Mark's Church. I slowed the van to a crawl and drove over parallel to the cruiser and pulled to a stop in the middle of 2nd Avenue, ready to turn myself in and throw myself on the mercy of the officers of the law. They weren't in there. I guess it was a coffee shop and they were in the deli. But apparently the loving couple whose evening had been made by an innocent blunder on the part of one of our youngest passengers either couldn't see that or their thirst for terror was finally sated. They drove slowly past us on the way to the tunnel of their choice. When they were out of sight, I drove the van slowly down 2nd Avenue, catching my breath. Everyone was sort of spent, marveling silently at our narrow escape. I'm not sure I actually asked, well, should we see if Laurie Reese is still on duty at the bar at CBGBs? But I'm pretty certain someone did. Thank you.